We are live to the very first episode of the Consulting Podcast. Super excited to have Claudia Ramos with me, consultant extraordinaire, tremendous story. She's been with me on the project here at Accenture for over a year now, almost a year, over a year now. Yeah. So we'll get into some of that. But Claudia, very excited to have you on the very first episode. I wanted to start off with you. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you, Mohammed?
I'm great. I'm super excited to kick this off. Weekends are always fun, and this new project, I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, I'm honestly excited too. So I'm happy to be here.
Okay, great. Okay. So Claudia, I know you a lot, right? But for those listening in and who don't know Claudia Ramos, can you just do a brief intro?
Yeah. So as Mohammed mentioned, my name is Claudia Ramos. I am from Puerto Rico. I am from a tiny town in the west side of Puerto Rico called Maya West. My background is in marketing, but right off the bat, I knew I wanted to do consulting. I had to explore a little bit, but I realized I wanted to do consulting. So after my bachelor's in marketing, I joined Accenture in last February of 2018. So I've been at Accenture for about 2 years now. And as Mohammed mentioned, for like more than a year, I've been with him on projects. So it's been a lot of cloud CRM implementations at this point, but in general, just a lot of learning within the tech space and a lot of learning of what it means to be a consultant.
Great. So tell me, let's go back to that, right? So you are from, use your words, tiny town in Puerto Rico. Undergrad marketing. So let's talk through that process. So how do you go from marketing in Puerto Rico to consulting at Accenture in now, I believe you're in DC now, right?
Yeah, I'm in DC now. So this is something I wanted to talk through today as well. But pretty much, I'm going to start like at my high school. I feel like that's the best place to like tell the story. Okay. So when I was in high school, we had teachers from like different places in the US. So we had teachers from like California, Minnesota, like different spots that for some reason they wanted to be in Puerto Rico. And like my town was close to a surf town with a lot of like snowbirds that came to Puerto Rico just to live down there. So I got the privilege to meet like one of my teachers was like a huge recruiter at Shell for a ton of years. And she was the first one that introduced like the notion of you don't have to be a doctor, you don't have to be an engineer, and you don't have to be a lawyer. Because like in the culture in Puerto Rico is very much, you need to be a doctor, engineer, lawyer, and maybe architect to be successful. So it's like truly, there wasn't a lot of notion of like, you can get a career in business. So from there, I had like this little idea, but like didn't know how to execute any of it. And it was just like, I think I want to do business. So I went into college starting out in like biology, thinking I wanted to be a doctor. And from there, I moved into marketing. And when in marketing, I met Carlos, and Carlos told me about his background. He had interned at Accenture strategy. And that's when I heard about consulting in general and like truly understood like, oh, you can get to consulting from like University of Puerto Rico and Puerto Rico in general. And that sort of paved the path of like, I started networking with people that were in consulting to understand what they did on a day-to-day, to understand what it meant, like what consulting truly was. And thanks to a lot of good friends like that are still at Accenture, I got to Accenture and got the experience.
That's great. That's great. So talk, before we proceed further, so the culture piece, right? That's very interesting to me because as you know, like I'm from, my background's Pakistani, right? It's the same there. Either you're a doctor, engineer, right? Maybe an attorney now, right? Architect, not so much, right? Not so focused there. But if you're a doctor and engineer, you've probably in their terms, you're the cream of the crop, right? From a career perspective. So was there a lot of cultural challenges, a lot of convincing done to sort of penetrate into, at least your goal was consulting, right? Or business, right? And through marketing, at least when you're in Puerto Rico.
So I think 100%, like even to this day, my mom doesn't really understand what I do.
Like, tell me about it, right? Tell me about it. My dad still thinks I don't work.
She's like, what is your title now? And I'm like, consultant. And she's like, what does that mean? What's the difference? So it's like, she's always been very supportive, but to her, it's like, my sister's a doctor, she's a doctor. So it's like she knew my sister's path. And for me, I was just like, no, I'm doing business. And she's like, what does that mean? Like, what is your path? How do you get there? So even to this day, it's like I tell her about what I do and she's super interested and excited. But I don't think even with my explanation, she understands fully.
I can totally empathize, right? And it's funny because I started the consulting guy because on a yearly basis or almost on a monthly basis, right? I would, even if it's family gatherings or talking to my parents, I always get the question like, what do you do? Right? I know you're doing something. You're obviously like getting paid and you have a home you're supporting, right? It's everything. But what do you do? And it's such a tough question to answer for folks who are not in that industry, right? For them to understand what that means. So it's very funny that this is a cross culture, right, phenomenon or a challenge, right, to convince our parents and convince our relatives what is it that we do.
Yeah, no, and it's very apparent even for like Carlos, my boyfriend, he does banking and everyone thinks he's a bank teller. Like he did investment banking and everyone were like, oh, so you work at a bank. And he's like, not the bank you think of.
Not the corner bank, right? Where I hand you cash and you, oh my God. No, it's the dynamic of truly just focusing on the American culture and folks who sort of grew up in that, right? And them understanding what careers are versus first generations, let's say, right? Or second generations, even to some extent, right? Them trying to penetrate these careers and explaining to their parents what it is that we do or the path that we're taking actually is something that is valuable and it's very highly regarded.
Yeah, no, and I'm very grateful for like my mom's support because even if she doesn't understand, she's always like, I'm here for you. You got this. Like, keep going.
That's good.
Yeah.
And you're progressing well, right? So we'll get into that in a bit, right? So marketing, did you work in marketing? I saw your LinkedIn, it said social media marketing at what point. So talk us through that a little bit.
So I did a couple of internships in marketing. So honestly, what I was interested in within marketing was market research because I was all about like understanding how like market share works and like how you grow your market share and in general, like how do companies succeed based on how much they understand their market. So that sort of translated into consulting in a sense because you need to understand your client. So it was one of those things of I did a couple of market research internships in smaller like spots in Puerto Rico. And I did a couple of social media internships because I feel like everyone knows that marketing is social media and there's always opportunities there. But pretty much from one of my internships, I spent some time with like a little startup in Puerto Rico. And that's when I learned a lot more about market research and like establishing loyalty with the customer and understanding them. And after that, I did one of my bigger internships before Accenture that was with a consumer products good company. So I did sales for them, which is like all intertwined a little bit, but it was interesting to see because it was a career track within that company of like, this is how you get to C-suite. Because to them, they knew like consumer product goods, sales is like number one.
And were these internships or was it after undergrad that you did internships? Okay.
Yes.
So you definitely went and very focused during your undergrad to land these internships in the business and marketing space very deliberately.
Yeah. So it was a little bit aggressive as well because I spent my first 2 years focused on like water polo and swimming.
Yes. So and the Olympic trials. So we'll get into that in a second.
So it was like my last couple of years, I was like, I need internships. I need to get like into business. I really want to understand it. So that's like, it was an aggressive couple of years there where I was like doing internships during the semester, during summer, during the semester, like all back to back. And then Accenture. That was like right after undergrad, I came into Accenture.
Okay. So you mentioned it. I was going to wait a little bit, but for those who don't know you, and obviously I've worked with you for a year, so I'm going to bring it up, but so you are an athlete, right? Undergrad and still to some extent, right? Whether you get time or not, that's another conversation, but swimming, right? I know I always joke that you were qualifying for the Olympic trials, right? So talk us through that. You're an athlete, a super qualified athlete at that. right? Not something you do for fun, but something you're doing competitively in college. And were you on scholarship for
Yeah.
swimming? Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that's also interesting. So I always swam because Puerto Rico had water polo, but it was on the like closer to the north and like where the capital is, San Juan. So
Okay.
I would like swim on a daily basis, and on weekends I would drive 2 hours to like go play water polo, stay
Wow.
over, and then go back home like every single weekend. So I was a water polo player, but technically a swimmer.
Yeah.
So how things played out is recruiting is very difficult from Puerto Rico because no one can see you in person. Like it's not very
Hmm.
common, and you need to
Hmm.
like set it up if you have like a competition in the U.S. for them to actually see you. So it's difficult in general. So I ended up staying in Puerto Rico, and I had it's Division 2 varsity swim. So I
Okay.
did varsity swim for a while, but before going into college and even throughout college, I was in the Puerto Rico national team. So it wasn't Olympics. Everyone thinks Olympics, but I went to like Worlds, Central American Games. So I played a lot with like,
It's close enough. It's if you put national in front of it. See,
yeah.
at least for me, right? So I am a terrible, terrible swimmer, right? I never picked up the skill set. My parents never forced me to learn. I could probably survive if I get thrown into a pool for roughly 30 seconds, and then I'm gassed out. I need to find the nearest corner. So when you tell me that you're competing at a national event, to me that's Olympic level, right? And it's that's where I come from.
Yeah, no, honestly, like the hours I don't think differ too much. Like I would put
Yeah.
in close to 20 hours a week or a little bit more. Like
Sheesh. Yeah.
it was like even I started very early on, like 9 years old, I was doing
Mm.
this. So I remember at one point someone was like asking us, like, don't you miss like your normal life? And we were like, this is all we've known. Like
This
we don't
is
know
this
the
is all I
difference.
know. This is normal. What do you mean normal?
Yeah. So it was like, yeah, practice. That's my day to day. What do you mean
Mm,
normal?
mm. So how was it senior year where you pivoted from, okay, like swimming is great, right? But now I need to pivot to a business career, right? Talk us through that mindset a little bit.
Yeah. So I wish it had been senior year because it would
Okay.
have helped me, but it was a little later on because like it's
Mm.
tough, right? When you are an athlete, thinking like you're retired, quote unquote, is like the roughest word to say. You're like, yes.
Yeah,
You're like, I'm a retired athlete. So like I stuck to it for like first year of college and then second year. And in college, you come to realize like this truly isn't a career. Like I can't play water polo for the rest of my life. I
yeah.
can't swim for the rest of my life. So it's like, no, I need to pivot. Like I've always wanted to do business. I always wanted to be like in a corporate environment. So that's when I like really honed in on that and like everything. Like honestly, my first couple of like positions and like internships were because of swimming and water polo because I had like a network.
Ah, okay,
So I
okay.
was like, can I help you out? Like, how's your like how are you doing with your social media? And like all of that sort of snowballed into like
Very
actual
nice.
internships.
Very, very good. So you use the position and your experience and the people that you met and leverage that to get to your first, let's say, internship or your first step towards the career that you wanted,
Yeah.
which is
And
very
I
similar
was
to what you have to do in consulting, right? So I'm drawing parallels of Claudia growing up, right, and setting the stage up for the beast of a consultant that you are, right, and trying to make the connects.
honestly, like I really like to think of this whenever I'm like having a hard week. I'm like, think back, like this is how it all started because like I remember being super adamant about like whatever extracurriculars I'm doing, I want to do
Hmm.
outside of business. Cause like
Yeah,
I see these people every day. I need to understand what's going on in like the engineering school, what's going on in like our agriculture school, like
yeah,
chemical
yeah,
school, like whatever it was within the university, I like wanted to branch out.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
that's how I saw it in consulting. I was like, I get to see all these industries, but from the
Mm.
business lens.
Very nice, very nice. So your boyfriend was the one who had the internship
Mhm.
at Accenture.
Yeah.
Did you also follow that track and you came through as an intern, or did you apply directly from undergrad or university and get in that way?
So I had to go directly into like full time. Like I applied directly into full time
Okay,
because I already had locked down my sales internship with the consumer
okay,
products good company. So I was late for that round and I was like, oh, okay, so I'll apply for full time. So that's how it went. But like even a year in advance, I was like still making those connections of like, these are the recruiters that go to Puerto Rico. So I want to keep in touch with them.
Yeah.
And they became very, very close friends. Like even when I got my promotion this week, I like called one of them up. I was like, thank you so much. Like
Oh,
you're the
wow.
first person I wanted to tell. And he's like, you better tell me. So like,
Nice.
yeah, I
It's
think
very
it's also
nice.
networking.
That's great. That's great. And it's a key skill to have, as you probably know now, right? 2 years into Accenture, everything from the projects that you get to how we'll talk about this at some point too, how fast you progress, right? All of it is dependent at some level to your network, right?
Yeah.
And if you're part of the family or you're not. And this is true for any, I would say, corporate job, right? It's not just consulting, because I like talking about this a lot, as you know, is you have to break it down into the innate sort of thought process humans have, right? We through evolution, we grew up in like packs, right? So the sense of community is sort of ingrained in us, right? And that is what we call networking in corporate terms now, right? You have a network that's your pack that's going to hunt and gather and grow each other together. And if you're not part of that pack, right, it's going to be very difficult for you to either progress at the speed that you want, or get the engagements, or the the meal of the day that the other pack hunted. It's very true. You could easily draw that parallel.
No, that's interesting because I see it now, right? Like
Yeah.
even when onboarding or like getting into Accenture, they were always like networking, networking, networking. And I was
Yeah.
like, what does that even mean? And then, like in this environment, like, what do you mean? And then throughout 2 years, like it became super apparent, like truly it's a key piece of consulting. And I
Yeah.
understand it now. Like with that analogy, I feel like it makes more and more sense,
Yeah.
honestly.
No, it took me. I've been now 8.5 years. It took me that long to draw the parallel. So, this is interesting. You're 2 years in. I always ask this anyone I meet, and we talked about how difficult it is to define our career, right? So 2 years into Accenture, now you're a consultant, and for those who are not from Accenture, we're 2 levels below consultant. So you come in as an analyst, then you get promoted into senior analyst, and then you land at consultant. Right. So Claudia did that in probably one of the fastest I've seen at Accenture in 8.5 years, in 2 years. So we'll talk about your progression in a second. But before that, define consulting. Now that you've been there 2 years, what is consulting, Claudia?
So hopefully I don't use too much jargon here.
Anything you want, right? This is on you.
No. So
And I'm doing this
honestly,
so I understand, right? I'll collectively put it together, but go for it.
I think consulting is understanding how you can partner with your client to deliver like true value, whatever that might be. Is it a new tool? Is it a new sort of way of doing business? Is it a new way of structuring themselves? Like I think truly it might sound like it's all jargon, but when you're here, when you're doing consulting, you understand like if your client is your partner and if you're truly helping them succeed, that's what it's all about. Like
Yeah.
that's truly the end game. So
Very
that's how I
nicely
would
put.
put it.
So client value, delivering client value in ways the client may not know themselves. If I had to summarize.
Yeah, pretty much. And like even identifying ways to deliver that value because they might not see the gaps that you're seeing. So it's
Okay.
your job to let them know, like, I think I could help in X, Y, and Z because we have that. Like we're familiar with it as consultants.
Yeah. Very nice. Very nice. Okay. So now taking a step back, year one for Claudia at Accenture as an analyst. Talk us through that.
Year one was pretty
I'm deliberately talking about year one, and then I'll go into year two, because your year two is some people's year 4 or 5, right? So let's I want to see where that exponential growth and what opportunity and what you did for the viewers listening in, that they could follow to get a similar trajectory.
Yeah. So year one, very first day in, it was like my very first time like moving to the States. So that was all very exciting. And in general, like I was all for it. Like I was very excited to be a part of Accenture. Very first project, I was with a large chemical company. So it was not the industry I wanted to be at. Like I've always wanted to be a part of financial services and work with a client within finance.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw it as an opportunity, right? Because your very first project, at least at Accenture, how it tends to work is that you're sort of assigned to it in a way.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
so I was assigned there, but I saw it as a growth opportunity anyway. To me, it was like, it's not truly my goal industry, but there's so much learning to do regardless. Like
Mm-hmm.
I really spent the time just trying to plug myself into wherever I saw people needed help. So I was like, oh, you're going to a meeting? Let me take notes. Let me help you out. Like, how can I help you prepare?
Right.
Because like my role was a sort of data analyst, more or less, but it wasn't like hardcore data. It was more so just understanding what we were doing with the program and then communicating it back in status reports, working with the client to understand where we could like speed things up or like where we were going pretty far ahead and everything was going well because it was a site migration program. So it was something that the client always wanted to understand, how are we doing with our sites? What's going on?
Okay.
So I think that first year truly was about a lot of learning of what is consulting, a lot of learning of, if you don't know something, don't be afraid to ask, because I tell this to like every single new joiner or buddy I get. It's like, we're here with you, like we're a team. And I remember like my very first 2 to 3 weeks, I spent like all my day with one of the other analysts that had been at Accenture for like almost a year.
Mm-hmm.
He taught me so much. It's insane.
Hmm.
So that's where I first started to notice like your network truly guides you at Accenture.
Right.
It wasn't only him. We ended up being sort of a group of analysts helping each other out, understanding the realm of what it meant to have this role, have this job. So it was all about like, oh, you don't know this shortcut? Let me help you out. I'll teach it to you. Oh, you don't
Very
know
nice.
X, Y, and Z? Let me help you out. Let me teach it to you. And we're still very close to this day.
Who is this? Let's give them a shout out.
Max Elrod, I have to 100% give him a shout out. He taught me so
Max,
much about like
Max,
yes.
if you're hearing this, would love to have you on. And I want to hear your side of the story.
Yeah. And I have like a couple more people, but like from the analyst pool, it was like Janelle Jackson, Jared, I'm not going to say his last name, David Millington, and higher up was like Amy Capitan. Like I had a ton of people that truly from the get-go were there for me. They were there to like help me grow and succeed.
Excellent.
Yeah. So I think this is interesting, right? Like how I pivoted into finance though was I was at my current role and I noticed in like one of those group chats with like all the analysts, someone was like, hey, I'm looking for a PM in a large like financial services client. And like I wrote up so quick. I was like, I'm interested in what's going on. Like, what is this role? And that's where I landed at my current client and where I met you.
Was this Lisa Diaz?
Yes, Lisa as well. Yeah. She posted it.
I love Lisa.
Yes, she's amazing.
She is.
Stalked her for like a week. I was like, is the role still open? Do you still need a backfill?
It's very interesting. Just to digress a little bit there. So we're not going to say the client name for obvious reasons, but it's a massive project that we're working on there, right? There's multiple different engagements within an engagement. And Lisa was the one sort of, I hate using the word analyst for it, right? But she truly was the foundation, if you will, of the different work streams, whether it's CRM, whether it's the other things that are going on. And I think she had spent a couple of years at that engagement at that point. So she was looking to do something else, which happens a lot in consulting, right? Or if the project needs change or skill set change, whatever it is, right? You have to sort of go away from that project and find something else. So we had to find a backfill because that's still a role that was necessary. And the criteria that we had discussed, right, before opening up a role was, the threshold or the level we need to find is either a Lisa, which is a very tall order to start with, right, or better, right? So it's not find someone off the the analyst pool and have them get staffed. It is you do need someone who can operate at a much higher level because as it is a very exciting but tough client, right? There's a lot of change that client is going through, and you need someone who can control the environment in a very, very pleasant way, if I will, right? And the pleasant piece is critical there, right? And that's where I faltered a little bit, right? So we'll go there. But Claudia, you were interviewed, you came in, and the rest is history at that point, right? You came in, you were shadowing initially, right, Lisa, and you weren't directly working in the same work stream as I was right off the bat, but that transition happened, a couple months down the road.
Yeah.
But okay, so now you're in FS. So what's your goal in FS? So first year, you're a sponge, you're consuming everything. Yeah. You are proactively asking everyone to have, for you to support them. Yeah. Right. And now you have got your first lead into FS.
Yeah. So my very first lead, I think something to note was like, I was not directly in your work stream, but I would see how you guys would work. And to me, that was like, I was all for it, because you and your team, like Kevin, like all of you were always like on top of everything. Like it was insane. Like the amount of knowledge I was getting just like by being a bystander was so much. Like it was pulling me in. I was like,
my head's getting bigger. My head's getting bigger. Keep it up. Keep it up.
And my role, don't get me wrong, my role was absolutely amazing. I was sitting in a very privileged spot of like working with leadership. Yep. So to me, I would not have given that up at the time, because I learned so much from everyone at that client. It's insane. Like I had true mentors throughout my entire time there. But it was a matter of like, CRM had always been something I was interested in because of my marketing background.
Yeah,
like I saw...
now I see it. Yeah. I didn't know why, but now everything that you talked about, from like understanding customers, their needs, like it's CRM right at the end of the day.
Pretty much. That's what I was thinking all along. And when I actually got to work with you guys, I saw it more and more. I was like, this is so interesting. Like I can't get bored of this, because it's one of those things where it's like, I can tie it back to my background, but I'm learning so much about so many different things. And you guys have been great mentors. So it's just a matter of like, this has been an amazing year. Like year 2 has been just insane. A lot of work.
Yeah. Insane is probably on the top of that list, but very nice.
No, yeah, it was like one of those things of like, going back to like my very first role at FS, I was using it to learn a lot as well, because that role was, I think, the very best way I could have learned of how to manage a client, because I was seeing it through leadership. And I learned so much from my seniors. Like it was insane. But I wanted to be at a role where I could start like taking charge, taking ownership of like true work, like true pieces of work, and help out like in a bigger way of like, and again, that was an amazing role, but I wanted to transition into something where I was like, this is Claudia Ramos, like she's owning X, Y, and Z. Yes. She's doing this, and this. So that was my goal. And I was like, seeing you make your move. So when you sold that work, where it was like, so for everyone listening in, I'm going to give context. I'm going to give context.
Head's getting bigger. I
know. It was like the work we have now was under another program. And then Mohammed, Kevin, and Kevin sort of took it upon themselves, and like Preet as well, obviously. So like truly push.
We don't give Preet any credit. Let's not talk about Preet. He's an entity in and of himself.
No. So like they spent so much time just working with the client to understand their CRM needs, that from there it sort of snowballed as well. Yeah. I'm using that word again because it snowballed. Like it turned into a larger piece of work, and it sort of turned into its own little monster, I would say. Like it's
100%. No, it's very interesting to hear it from your perspective, because as sort of like a leader or manager, whatever you want to call it, of an engagement, you always keep a pulse on everyone on the engagement. So when you had joined, right, there was, obviously we weren't directly associated, but I was seeing you presenting and being called upon and helping support a lot of the discussion that was happening with our leadership, but also the client leadership, right? So you were in that room, in that conference room, right? When we were traveling before and everything shut down now, but you were always there, right? And I've given this advice to yourself and most of the people that I talk to is to be valuable, right? And be known or recognized, you truly have to own that domain, right?
Mhm.
Like you, whether it's a managing director, a partner, another analyst, consultant, manager, it doesn't really matter, right? But if there's a question that comes from a client and Claudia Ramos or, consultant XYZ is the person who they call upon, now you rubber stamped, right? As valuable to that engagement, as a true member of that engagement, as a lead of that engagement. And your goal as an analyst should always be to position yourself in that, right? Where you are such an expert or you're such in the details of that domain that there truly isn't anyone, right, that can answer that question or without your help can't answer that question,
Mhm.
right? And you really did that very, very effectively in a very, very fast time frame, right? And that's your effort side, right? But then also, I don't want to discount or ignore your personality and your sort of communication skills, because I think your success is also very influenced by that as well. And I see that every day, right? Even now on the work that we do now, right? I think 50% of it is managing different folks on the client side and internal, right?
Mhm.
So, and by management, I don't mean like you're giving them tasks. I mean more from a expectation management, more from how you communicate certain news, right? How do you keep people honest on certain timelines, right? And you do that very, very effectively in such a pleasant way that people want to work with you.
I hope so.
No,
I hope that's the
it's
case.
I
That's
see
what I
it, right?
strive for.
Yeah. So, but I don't think people should ignore, right? And hopefully they get this picture now about you is don't let the what you see on the face, right? And what's coming out of the mouth uh it, ever fool you in the monster that's in you, right? Like you're a Division 1 athlete, right? You are a go-getter, right? You are a sponge of information, right? That just sucks it up, right? And turns it around in a very fast method. So there's madness behind a very calm sort of silhouette, right? And that is, I think that is an amazing quality that you have, right? And
Thank
then
you,
sort
thank
of
you.
it's necessary in our industry.
100%. Especially with everything happens so quickly, at least in our projects,
Oh yeah.
at least in our program,
Well,
our client. It's just like, I feel like you can never let go of like that ease because it's very quick to get into the weeds, to get into like the frustrations of like, this is going so quickly.
yeah, no, it's funny, right? Because when you're looking for a career in consulting, one of the sales pitch you get is, a year in consulting is 5 years or 4 years in industry, right?
Mhm.
But if you really sit down and think about that, that means that shit's happening at a very, very fast pace.
Yep.
What you have to do in 24 hours is, times 5 that normal person has to do. So
Pretty
it's
much.
it's it's the counter argument to it, but it's very true, right? To change culture, to change processes, to change. I hate the word transform, right? Yeah, it's very jargony and consultant, right? But to really do that, right, you have to sort of hit it hard, right, and hit it where change is needed very fast.
hmm No, yeah, 100%. And it's one of those things of like, I really wanted to be here. I really wanted to be in this seat of like everything's going 200 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Because when you're young, when you're fresh out of college, that's what you need. That's what you want. Like you want to learn as much as you can as quickly as possible and just like
Hmm.
build upon it and build upon it, and build upon it. That was my goal. And that's what I continue to like focus on throughout my time at Accenture, I feel like.
Very nice. Very nice. So year one, right? How long did it take you to go from analyst to senior analyst?
So that one, because of the cycles and how it works, I was up for like mid-years, what we call mid-years. And I had to explain this recently. Mid-year does not mean like June, July. For us, it means like February because of like our fiscal year and how everything's set up.
Yeah.
So in February, I was senior analyst, and that was a big sort of thanks to like Rajiv, Eileen, and everyone that shaped me on that very first financial services client,
Yep.
just because they were mentors from the start as well. They were there for me, like giving me the support. So senior analyst within almost a year, I would say, just because of how the cycles went down. A little bit more than a year, actually.
Year and a half, let's say.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So year and a half senior analyst. And then at that point, I was at CRM.
Well, continue. I want everyone to hear this. So let's do the math, right? Claudia has been at Accenture for 2 years. And we stated in the beginning, Claudia is a consultant, right? So you go from analyst to senior analyst, year and a half. And then you go from senior analyst to consultant in how fast?
A couple of months, only like 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
So I, for everyone listening, you know, I'm very, very curious if you know anyone personally, right, that has beat that, right? 6 months to a promotion. It is extremely aggressive, and it is well deserved by every regard, right? I mean, and I say this because I know you. Obviously, there's others that don't know you, right? That are probably going to say that this is something that you probably got lucky or you got into the right project, whatever the case may be, right? But keeping in mind, right, you made the jump from analyst to consultant in 2 years. I think that is the fastest you can do it, hands down. Right? I don't think anything faster is possible. And if I double click into that, right, another jargon, 6 months. I got to do a video on like jargon. It's I'll tell you a story after this, but yeah, 6 months. It's congratulations.
Thank you. And I have to say, like, I really have to take the moment, since I've been doing shout outs all throughout, I have to take the moment of, like, again, networking came into play. Like,
yeah.
I leaned on my network because I knew of people, like a couple of folks from back home, like Lauren and David, they're from UPR as well. They hit it at 2 years with a lot of hard work as well.
Okay.
So I went to them. I was like, how did you do it? How did you make this happen? Like, what did you see? Like, did you just go for it, work with your like career counselor? How did it work? And they guided me through it. And then additional to that, when I started getting the questions of like, oh, you're going for it? You've only been a senior analyst for 2 months. I leaned on other folks, like people I knew that had a quick turnaround as well. Like Ryan, a friend from my very first project as well. He was like, he wrote up his sort of like how it all happened for him.
Okay.
And I sent that to like people within our project so they would understand, like, I've seen it happen other places. Like, I feel like there are use cases for like, this is why I'm going for this right now and why I'm interested in being a consultant.
100%. And just to give you some perspective, so it is very possible, right? And you've now given like 3-4 names that folks that did go from 1 to 2 years into analyst to consultant. So don't let that deter you. If you have a true story, you have a good story, you're adding value, hard work is there, right? All the boxes are checked, right? It has to be the boxes are checked, right? And ask yourself in front of a mirror that, are you really operating at a consultant level, or whatever level that's above you that you're trying to aim for? Are you ready, right? And if the answer truly is yes, make your case, right? The worst that could happen is what the sort of regular path is going to be anyway, right? You get a no and nothing happens, but at least you have now raised your hand and informed leadership, your career counselor, that you are ready for promotion. You're operating at that capacity, and you have a desire to move up, right? And managing your career is something we talk about always, right? You have to be your own cheerleader in this in any career, right? And especially in consulting. And you did that. And I remember getting that sort of detailed write-up of why you deserved it and what you've been doing. And we reviewed it at the leadership level, right? And I for one, I could not refute any of the points because I'd seen you within a year and a half, how much of a significant impact you made, right? And how valuable you are to the project, right? If we go around and say, God forbid there's budget cuts or whatever reason, we have to let people go, right? And we say, we get to your name, right? There's no one in our engagement that could cut out your name. And I mean that from the very top, at the Cal level down to any analyst. So, kudos to you.
Thank you.
I'm probably on top of that list right now, just for reference.
No. But I think truly, like you mentioned it, right? And we were talking about it yesterday of like, this is another thing you hear in consulting a lot of, vocalize what you want. Like be very vocal of what you think you want, what you think you've earned and why. Like it's not just like I want X, Y, and Z. It's like have something to support it, and just that'll drive you as well. Like that'll help you drive your goals, but also everyone around you will take notice. And it's great advice I got from you, and it's great advice that like even from the start, like I feel like those are the two key points we learned like right starting consulting, of like networking and be vocal about your goals. And you come into it thinking like, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean? And the drive your career quote. And it's like, it's literally our day to day. Like at the end of it, like you learn more and more. It's very true. It's very true.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. And you know, we always say that there's going to be what people think is your career path, right? And some of it is influenced by personal sort of expectations, right? Or how you think you need your team members to help your overall agenda be successful. And then there's your internal thought process, right? And you have to, make sure that your internal career trajectory, your what you think is success for you gets recognized and you're on that track, right? There's no straight track, right? You can never be like, I want to do this and I'm not going to do anything else unless it's this. That's a recipe to get fired, right? But you always have to make sure that the themes are aligned, right? If you wanted to go to FS, right? There's a bunch of clients within FS. Don't be specific to one, right? If you want to do a specific functional area or a technical area, whatever it may be, right? And there's no right answer for everyone. It's specific to everyone, but make sure you're aligned from a theme perspective and you're stepping in that direction every single step.
Yeah, 100%.
So with that 6 month, right? Like we talked about how there's a lot to do, right? Let's talk about a little bit of like work-life balance, right? Does that exist? Does that not exist? Does that bother you? Does it not bother you? Because I see you on a daily and others on our project, right? Sometimes working 12:30 in the mornings, 1 in the morning in some cases, extreme cases. And then we're up again 7:30, right? Leading calls without any hesitance, without any sort of issues, right? Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So it's funny. I was like recently, Christine and I were pinging at like 12 p.m. and she was like, are we workaholics? And I'm like, how did you not know? Like, of course we are. Like, why are you asking this? And she's like, well, yes. No, but pretty much like it's a lot to do. And it's one of those things with your drive, you understand that you can't wait until tomorrow to complete X, Y, and Z. Like it's going to delay everything because everything's going so quickly that you need to close things out as quickly as they come in. So it's true. Like I spend a lot of time working, and like even my sister and my mom, they bring it up, but they're also supportive of it. My sister is like, oh, you're working? Oh, FaceTime me while you work at like 12 p.m. Yeah. And she'll be there for me, like cheer me on a little bit, and then we'll hang up after like 10 to 15 minutes. But in general, like it's one of those things of I really don't mind it. Like when we were talking about this as well, when you're in growth mode, you don't even realize you don't care for work-life balance. You're like there to learn, to like provide that value, close out everything that needs to be closed out, help out your team, like whatever it might be. So I know it's a lot to do, and I know that work-life balance, the line gets blurred because depending on the day, I will say I have work-life balance, but there are some days where it's not.
Where it's not there. It's so true. It's so true. And I one ping sticks out to me, right? That you had pinged me. I think it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, but we were talking about prepping for some meeting the following day. I think it was about like 7 in the afternoon. And we were talking about what slides or some whatever spreadsheet we need to create. And I was like, just leave it to tomorrow. Because I hate the fact that we're always working so much or whatever is happening. So I just leave it to tomorrow. And you replied back, it's like, Mohammed, I will do it. It's like, you don't know me. And I was like, whoa. Okay. So, if you're masochistic that way, let's go.
Because I was trying to make a joke out of it. But to me, it was like, you think I'm going to tell you I'm not going to do the slides? It's like, you don't know me.
No, it was great. It was great because that, I say this to you a lot because you remind me a lot of like when I was sort of coming up, right? The ranks and everything. It's, and the analogy that I used yesterday with you that I'll sort of rephrase it and reshare it for the viewers today is it's where your dial is, right? So when if you're fully dedicated, right? And your aspiration and your goal truly is to make it, right? Let's say whether it's to the next level up, to eventually down the road to a partner, right? You want to bounce out of consulting into something else, whatever that may be, right? You are in what I call growth mode, right? Meaning that your knob of your career or your life is on growth. So when you are on growth mode, it requires you sacrifice some other areas of your life, right? Everyone that I've seen progress and be tremendous in their careers and is in growth mode is working crazy. They're hungry for it, right? They ignore, they don't feel the pain of it, and they're fighting for it. So if you're in growth mode and you it's going to sound awful, right? But if you kid yourself and say, I'm going to relax, right? You're going to be eaten up by that hungry dog that's out there who wants it much more than you do, right? Who does not value sleep or, going out or whatever it may be that's your pastime as much as you do. Now, your whole life should not be in growth mode. There comes a point where you got to change the dial a little bit, whether it's, raising a family mode or whatever. And I was talking about that with you yesterday, right? How, after I had my kid, right, my growth needle, right, I had to, with my wife beating down on me, I had to tweak that a little bit, right? It's no longer okay for me to work, right, throughout the night or whatever, because there's a little kid and there's a wife that also needs that, time and attention and everything. So for you, in your case, right, you're doing the right thing. And while I agree with work-life balance, I'm a proponent for it, right? I do think there are days and weeks or whatever, or engagements where the focus is needed.
No, yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. Because it's not like it's one of those things where it's like, this is a personal decision. It's not 100%. Like anyone's going to be like, you absolutely need to stay up to do X, Y, and Z.
Exactly.
It's something more like it comes within you of like, I really want to complete this when it needs to get done. So I'm going to stay back. I'm going to get this done. And you'll always find a way, right? Because like when I really, really want to work out, I just go at 6 a.m. and then I'm back at it at 7 a.m.
Oh, you just wake up. You just wake up an hour earlier.
Yeah. But like you find a way. You find it. I don't know. I honestly think
I'm telling you, I have this health thing figured out, but we'll talk about it in a second.
Oh my God. I still can't believe you think you have it figured out.
It works, Claudia. So the way I look at it, right. And I did this in a consulting way as well, right. I was like, okay, so what is my goal? My goal is to lose weight, right? So over COVID or whatever, you've gained some whatever, and everyone on my project, you're an athlete. There's other athletes like Manoj on our project. Run, they can wake up any time of the day, 6, 7, 4, 5 a.m. Doesn't really matter, and go run a marathon, right? Like the virtual New York marathon. This guy was talking about it casually on a Friday. Yeah, I'm gonna run the marathon tomorrow. Haven't really trained, and goes and does it and beats his time. Ridiculous,
and then
right?
The hikes are insane too.
Hikes,
like he'll do a full.
And that's inhumane, right? From my perspective. No. So what I thought about it is how can I achieve my goal with as little as an effort in as fast as a time as I can. Right. And one of the things that I was reading, and these articles come up all the time, maybe it's true, maybe it's not, is like running for 30 minutes or an hour only burns like 200-300 calories, right? So, and that to me is like, what, you go eat like a granola bar and that's like, there's 200 calories. So after all that effort, all that blood, sweat, and tears, you burn 200 calories. F that, right? So how can I shorten the time frame and shorten the effort? And the beautiful answer is you don't eat.
Oh my God.
So don't go on a water diet for 2-3 days and drop that water weight initially, but then your body goes into ketosis, right? And you'll start losing and dropping those pounds, right? And maybe you'll fluctuate back, right? But you've hit your goal. That's all that matters. For that month or two, you're set, and then you could pack it on again and redo this whole thing again. But the effort is so little. and it's so fast that it's immaterial. It doesn't matter at some point. The pain doesn't matter, or the fact that you're going to gain it back 10 times over doesn't really matter in the
Oh
long
my
run.
God. No, I love to eat and I love to cook. I can't do that. I'd rather work out, I
Yeah, but
think.
3 days, 3 days, 3, 4 days, that's all it takes. So
Oh my
like my
God.
most aggressive was I went on a fast, just a water fast for the longest I've done is like 3.5 days. Right. And I was down 6 pounds. And I'm sure like 5 of those 6 was just water weight.
Mhm.
Right. But I felt a lot better. Right. It was sort of like a detox. It was, I felt less bloated. And believe it or not, you feel a lot more active, right? The first 3 days or 3 days are like very, very difficult. You get those headaches, the coffee headaches and everything. So I started drinking more coffee in the morning, but it does feel good.
Mhm.
Now, did I keep those pounds off? Absolutely not. But that's besides the point.
My God. That's
It's
so funny.
difficult, waking up early and running. I can't do it. It takes a different mind.
To be honest, it's all because like I have my boyfriend's support as well. Because like we during like to your point during COVID, oh boy, like the way I would like de-stress was cooking. So I
Cook
would
and
cook
eat,
like
cook and eat.
I know it was like appetizers with like dessert, like the
Oh
whole
man.
shebang.
Oh
So,
man.
and he and I are very similar in every way, shape, or form. So it's like one of those things of like one day I'll wake up and I'll wake him up, and then another day he'll wake up and he'll wake me up. So it's like we like yin and yang it out until we like
Awesome.
get to work out. And
That's
like
awesome.
he works the same or more as me, and I think that helps me in my work ethic as well
Mm.
because he is from the same mindset. He's very much in growth mode. So it's like I have that support here on a daily basis that like I can work out, I can cook. Like it's all, I'm here for everything. I don't
That's
know.
awesome. No, good for you. Good for you. And a supporting partner with a similar mindset, similar sort of passion for success,
Yeah,
right? Makes the world of a
100%.
difference. World of a difference.
100%. And even like getting started, like he was the one to introduce me of like, what is consulting and how do you get there? And like, we honestly want to go back to Puerto Rico so bad, even with like Zoom videos or whatever it is, to like
Mm-hmm.
pay it forward. Cause like
100%.
you don't hear about consulting. You don't hear about all these like minority programs to get you into consulting, banking, X, Y, and Z. So like
Yeah.
that's a huge goal for me, like paying it forward later on or like as soon as I can.
No, I see it in you, and I think you'll do a tremendous job. I think a lot of people would value both here in the States and Puerto Rico or anywhere else in the world, right? That hear
Yeah.
your story and see sort of your trajectory, right? Just going up where you were and completely changing that to a fully corporate, boss lady, right? That's kicking ass and taking names.
That's the goal. No, honestly, and you're the goal mom, and we've talked about this,
No, no,
like
no.
that trajectory. Like that's the trajectory I wish I would hit. Like we'll see.
My
We'll see
head
how
has
things go
gone three
down.
times bigger just in this first podcast.
And honestly, it's not even on purpose. I don't want anyone thinking I'm like trying to be like the junior here. Like, no.
No.
It's just literally the way I want things to play out if everything goes well. It's like I want to continue to hit that fast track of like how much more can I learn?
Yeah.
How quickly can I learn and absorb and like take advantage of this opportunity I was given? That's the end game here.
Very, very good. Yeah. No, you have to ride the momentum. You have to ride the waves, right? And you have to take advantage of your engagement if it is large enough, if the account is large enough, if the leadership visibility is there, right?
Yeah.
You have to ride it, and those are things that get you on that fast track, right?
Yeah,
It
and
changes a little bit at some point where sales matter, but
mhm.
at least to manager and senior manager, early senior manager, you're that's the trajectory up.
Yeah, and being fully transparent, like wherever, like let's say something happens and like I end up in another account, I feel like that's always going to be there. Like that hunger is always going to be there.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
how can I continue this path? How can I like continue to grow? I don't know.
Okay. So have you as part of this, right? This is something that I've seen a lot of A-type analysts or people sort of go through is when they start getting promoted or at some point when they have the experience, they start thinking about business school,
Mhm.
right? Is that something you're thinking about? Is that something that's always in your periphery? Any thoughts there?
Yes. So it is actually like it's one of those things of I'm studying up even now For the
Okay.
GMAT, I want to study for the GMAT just to understand, like, is it something I want to pursue? Like, it's a very personal choice here as well. Like, what's the trade-off? Like, what is it? Do I truly think I can have this fast track and just go for it? Or like, do I want to get that stamp of approval? Like we talked through of like,
Yeah.
you went to a really good business school, so you have that on, like in general, it shapes out a professional, right? It gives you that sort of, okay, they went to business school, they have an MBA.
Yeah.
So I'm torn, but I am studying for it and I am considering it just because I need to explore every avenue that will get me to grow.
There's no harm in keeping your options open.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what you're doing. If you have this score, you have that sort of ticket that can be checked at any point, right?
Exactly.
All the power to you. And you may never do it, right? Or you may do it, right? At least for when I was coming up, it was initially, even when I got the job, right, at Accenture, I did it right out of undergrad. That was something I was thinking about. I had the whole Manhattan GMAT SAT, right? GMAT SAT. I was reading up, I was prepping. And then I got so caught up in just the focus on the engagements and just running up the ladder with the right experience as fast as I can, that sort of took a backseat. Right. And now at my level, like, it's sort of diminishing returns for me to do that. Right. Maybe an exec MBA down the road at some point. But people in your shoes, right, that is a very viable option, I think, and you should equip yourself with as many options, especially in economy nowadays.
Yep.
Right. Like with the world, just 2020 was like I don't even know how to make an analogy for 2020, but the world changed. Right. So if you're comfortable with any of the norms that we knew before 2020, right, it's going to be a wake up call for a lot of people. Right. Everything from just the way you work to the way you are going to now have to operate in consulting to the way you're going to have to sell. Right. When you get to that level is much more different and more difficult, I would say, right? Because it's all relationship based. Our work is very, very relationship based. And that relationship is very difficult to maintain virtually.
Yeah.
Right. Like when you can't see and feel the person, and I don't know, I mean, feel in like the literal sense.
Yeah. But like read the room. You can't read the room.
Right. Like there's so many emotional and sort of nonverbal communication things that are happening in any conference room at any given time that you miss out on a call, right? That you can't see what's going on, right? You can't feel, as humans, we feel each other's energy, right? And then you don't see that. And that's very difficult. And a lot of, I would say, challenges people face nowadays and the breakdown in communication can be a result of that. The fact that we're virtual now.
Yeah, no, to be honest, I think I noticed it on calls just because you can no longer like step away from what's being discussed and like have your little own like discussion on the side. So the only way that happens is like yelling over someone else and being like, "Hey, Mohammed, did you figure out X, Y, and Z?"
It's hard. It's hard, right? And or you're pinging during a conversation, right? And you're distracted. And worse yet, right? I think this is going to get better over time, where if we remain in this hybrid, which I very, very strongly believe we will, this hybrid virtual versus office work environment, more and more people will sort of take on the video chats, right? And sort of like what we're doing here, right? Versus like, I think some clients are still not fully on board with like turning on their video cameras and getting more personal. Right. So in those cases, I think a FaceTime call every now and then, a WhatsApp call, right, with the video every now and then does help, but it's still not the same thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we get used to it because, like, honestly, with my family being far away from me, like video chat works. Honestly, like I feel like I'm with them in the room. It can be the way. I don't know. I think we'll get used to it somehow if it's truly the case that we're not going back fully.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. So one final thing, Claudia, I know we talked about this. So what are your aspirations outside of Accenture or outside of work? Like what you and Carlos are thinking about, where you're headed?
Yeah. So something we've really been trying to pick up is like real estate investing. So we've spent some time like reading up and learning about it. It's just difficult with like balancing it out with everything else because at the end of the day, the priority is my role, like my job.
Yes.
So it's one of those things of like, when we get the time, we'll invest it in it. But it's really like, I want to learn how to carve out time for it, like be very adamant about spending time in this, because at the end of the day, what I want to be able to grow and what we want to be able to grow is something that is sustainable throughout like a long period of time. It's
Mm-hmm.
something that's truly, you can sort of have that comfort of knowing that if anything happens, you have something that's equity, literally equity,
Yeah.
standing
Yeah.
there to support you. So it's something we're interested in. And I think outside of that, what I mentioned earlier, is something we really want to shape out of some sort of like video conferencing or whatever it might be, to pay it forward, to like spend
Mm.
time with people in high school and college and whatever it may be. And we can start in Puerto Rico, but I think it goes broader than that. Like, I think even with what we realized today of like, we were going through the same like culture shock, even with
Oh
being
yeah.
like miles and miles apart. Like, that's something that we're really interested in starting up, of like some place where we can share our knowledge of, this is how you get into a corporate environment if that's your goal,
Yeah.
and this is what we had to do to get here, and we're happy to help. Like, how can we help? So I think those are two main things. So it's not a lot of rest during the weekends.
I
It's just
listen, it is to find the time to do all of that on top of everything that's going on. We talked about work-life balance and the lack thereof, right? It's very difficult, right? But
yeah.
I don't think it's impossible,
Mhm.
right? There's a lot of examples of folks that are killing it, right, in the work stream, in the workforce, sorry, right? But then are also killing it in their own personal endeavors, whether it's sort of nonprofit causes, or if it's even for-profit partnerships or businesses that they have, right?
Mhm.
And it goes back to the fact that you are more than just your immediate career, right?
Yep.
The whole person that is you, it's made up of everything, right? That is your career, your personal life, your personal businesses, right? And you have to progress all of that together in growth mode, right?
Mhm.
It's you can't be specific. There's only a certain time frame in your life where you can focus and build it up.
Mhm. 100%. And it's like, it will always help, I feel like, even in the work environment, in the corporate environment, because it gives you confidence even to like continue to like strive for like that next role, that next sort
Yeah.
of step, because like you have something else going on in the background that gives you that level of comfort of like, let me strive for more and more.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I think it
It's that
helps.
hunger, right? That hunger has to remain,
Mhm.
right? Just like I'll give you a food analogy because that's all I think about.
Now
Is
that you're drinking water,
this
every
this is after like 2 cups of coffee, and I did go for a run this morning because I
Oh,
wanted my
okay.
yeah, it's a weekend. I was like, let me get my mind to be a little bit
Are
fresh.
you eating today though?
I am. So the weekends I eat.
You
Usually the
cheat.
wife and I go back, or we go to the city.
Aw.
Since still socially distancing, but we try that. But that hunger has to remain. That hunger
Mhm.
cannot go away, and as long as you recognize the hunger, right, you're going to progress. Right. That's the beauty of this country. That's the beauty of hard work, is that it does
Mhm.
at some point, at some level, maybe not immediately, right, it does come into fruition, and that is satisfying, right? And
Mhm.
that's the meal that you're going to eat that's going to make you a little bit comfortable until you look at the next thing forward,
Yep.
right? So that's how it goes.
So something I wanted to ask you about, if we're like closing out that topic, I
Yeah.
saw in your channel like you travel a lot. So I wanted to understand like, how did that go? Like, how did you find time to travel throughout like all this like fast track sort of
So
experience?
it's a good question. So my PTO, my paid time off
Mhm.
strategy, at least before COVID, right? We haven't really traveled since COVID, at least internationally, has been a certain way. So what I historically have done is I usually do not take any days off for most of the year,
Mhm.
right? So outside of sick days, right? Because you don't want to work when you're sick. Um, I would not take any time off. So I'm not going away for a week or two. I'm not doing whatever, right? And I aggregate all of my time off for a downside, or during at the end of the project, or if I'm in between projects. And typically I would take 3 to 4 weeks collectively right? And
Yeah.
do like a backpacking trip in a continent, right? Or whatever. So that has worked out, right? Where I've taken a month off, at the end of an engagement, or, when my work is really not there, right? And just traveled with the wife and sort of just knocked a bunch of countries, bunch of cities, and a bunch of experiences off the list. And then you come back sort of towards the end of that trip, just not wanting to travel for a whole year. So like, I got to get it out of me. The negative to that is like, while you get the countries, you end up spending a lot more, right? Because it feels like it because it all hits you at one time, right? So you're at the end of it, you're like, I'm done. I don't want to do it again.
I know, but that's like being an adult though, because like when I was in college, I would do backpacking as well. And it's like at that point, you're like, it's staying in hostels, you're like doing it on the cheap.
No, yeah.
So it's like, it's crazy. Like now I see it 100% because like I don't think I would stay at a hostel unless I like needed to. So it's like one of those things of when you grow up, you're like, yes, I need to spend in this vacation. But it's amazing you get to do that because like, that's a goal of mine. If I ever get the time of like, I want to continue to travel.
You have to find the time to do certain things. Like I said, growth mode doesn't mean you give up on everything in life, right? Growth means that you're just growing in all aspects of life, right? And one of them is to make yourself aware of the world, right? I think traveling is, I know a lot of people say it's a cliche, right? But it is true to some extent. It opens you up. It opens you up to other people's beliefs. It opens you up to other people's sort of ideologies, cultures, right? And you become a better, well-rounded person overall, right? And in our industry where, I mean, look around you, right? In our project, there's people from like 4 different continents just in our engagement.
I know.
Right. And that's the beauty of it.
I love it. Yeah.
There's all sorts of countries, all sorts of peoples with their backgrounds, and it's beautiful. Right. And I think traveling just, exponentially sort of makes you acclimated to everyone. So it's needed and it's good. And I think sometimes it's worth splurging, right? I think you have to balance it, right? But you have to sort of understand like, where is it that you want to splurge? I'm not the person who would go and buy something like, I don't know, maybe a very expensive, whatever, right? Maybe spend it on experiences, or if you have a certain taste or a certain desire in certain things, whether it's shoes, clothes, watches, travel, what is it, right? Make a budget and do it.
Yeah.
It's going to keep you sane. It will keep you sane.
That was like, honestly, my mom and my sister, like we grew up like that. It was one of those things of like, we would spend the money on travel. It was like, we were doing well. Everything was good, but like, we didn't want anything else outside of like, let's go to a new country. Let's do something together. And that was the mood.
Good. No, that's very good to hear. And it seems like the values that your family have brought you up with, right? They're translating into a very, very, and forming you into a very, very sociable and likable and very intelligent human being. So kudos to your mom, Claudia's mom, if you're listening. Thank you. Thank you to you.
Send it to her. So she's gonna listen to it 100%.
Well, Claudia, it was great talking to you, and I'm very, very happy that you were the number one, right? First spot in the consulting podcast. I'm a fan of yours, and thank you for taking the time out on the weekend, on a sunny weekend. That is, I don't know if it's sunny in DC. It's here in
it is.
Around New York, but thank you so much, and hope to talk to you again at some point in the future.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me, and good luck. I'm going to share this link with a ton of people, like everyone to come on this channel. Honestly, I want you to interview like all of my friends, honestly. No, but truly, like, best of luck in this. I think it's going to be great. Like, honestly,
thank you.
You're doing something that's new, that's exciting, and just in general, like, as we were talking through, it humanizes people. So
yes, absolutely. With that, have a great day.